Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a big show lined up for you. Let's get right on into it. All right, yeah, Lanier has set a visit, and also FSU has pretty much told the NCAA to stick it, and it's about time. Now, this show is going to start a little late tonight because I was stuck at work all day.
Drink it up, big boss! All right, drink it up, gambler.
It's not easy this time of year. The sides of those roads, you know, they're not going to get Kaiser bladed by themselves.
Some folks call it a sling blade. I call it a Kaiser blade.
Well, let's get into the first part of this video. We're going to talk about FSU, and they have finally stood up to the NCAA, which I am very glad they've done. And they have petitioned the NCAA to rescind the penalties related to the NIL so-called recruiting violations. And I've been pushing them to do this for weeks and weeks. I don't understand how they can possibly be penalized over something that nobody else is being penalized over. And they finally brought that up, one of their attorneys did, because nobody else is getting creeked. It's just since they were the first one in line to get hammered, they tried to make a little bit of a example of them, and then they were really going to go after Florida. They were going to wear them out over the Rashada thing.
You're welcome.
And yeah, you're welcome, Florida, because we kept them from hurting you. And then they were really going to make an example out of us. They hadn't given us enough grief over the whole Jeremy Pruitt thing, where we lost 25 scholarships, $8 million fine, 2 years of negative recruiting hanging over our head. They were going to get on us about an airline flight for Nico from California to Knoxville because I guess he was supposed to hitchhike or walk or something like that. But anyway, they hammered FSU over a very ticky-tack thing. And this is by Ross Dellinger, who's doing some stellar work, by the way. He's really putting out some good information, especially on the NCAA settlement that they're working on. And this has to do with an incident that happened in 2022, a booster and a representative of the school's NIL collective. And they actually did a negotiated resolution they shouldn't have. They should have held off, and in hindsight, they know that now.
Once again, things that could have been brought to my attention yesterday!
It says 6 weeks after the finalization of the case, a U.S. District Attorney Court in Greenville, Tennessee, restrained the NCAA from enforcing its interim NIL policy, prohibiting athletes from negotiating NIL compensation. And I covered the crap out of that. That was up in my hometown of Greenville, Tennessee. And what they did was they put out a preliminary restraining order, the judge up there, and he had initially not given him the initial one, but he went ahead and did it for the entirety of the case because what he told him was, what you're doing, it's not going to work out. You're going to lose. He told him up front, you're going to lose this case. And one of the reasons why, the Supreme Court's already voted 9-0 against the NCAA when it comes to NIL. And one of the judges there even told him, you bring back another case to us and we're going to really make an example out of you. Because the Supreme Court has pretty much told him what you're doing is against the law and you need to stop it.
Stop breaking the law, asshole!
Anyway, as part of the resolution, FSU agreed to a 3-game suspension of their offensive coordinator, Alex Atkins, because he drove the player to the booster meeting. He wasn't in the meeting, but he drove him there. Had they used an Uber, I guess it wouldn't have been a big deal. But they wound up giving him 2-year probation, all kinds of recruiting restrictions, a penalty of 1% of the athletic department. That may not sound like a lot. That's anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million. So they hammered him over that. You know what they use that money for? To go after others. They use that as part of their budget. And realized they had hired like 40 investigators that Charlie Baker brought in, the new president. And if you know anything about him, he pretty much told you up front.
Right now, there are no rules around how name, image, and likeness works. And for your audience, that's the opportunity for student athletes to benefit from their name, image, and likeness. And
that there were no rules, but they tried to retroactively go back and punish people. Said the school agreed to serve the probation and suspend the coach. And what they've argued is that they're not obligated to all this other crap and the 5 scholarships they lost over 2 years because nobody else is being punished for anything. Said the letter says, the disassociated penalties and booster restrictions are squarely tied to the court's preliminary injunction and therefore cannot be enforced by FSU or the NCAA at this time. FSU is disadvantaged by taking steps to expedite the resolution. Absolutely. FSU should not be the only institution penalized simply because it was first in line. Said the violations which it is responsible were more limited and is cooperated fully to resolve the case, etc. Now, if you followed that case up in Greenville, look, Tennessee, the University of Tennessee, and also Virginia was in on this too, the state's attorney general, they warned them up front. Tennessee warned NCAA, do not do this Don't come at us like this.
Don't be a fool. We can do this easy, or we can do it real easy.
Yeah, they were warned. So it didn't have to go down like this, but the NCAA decided, they even put out word to one of their reporter friends that, hey, we may even hit them with a death penalty. That was actually floated around, which, needless to say, our Attorney General didn't appreciate it, and we pretty much hammered the NCAA.
You're all clear, kid. Now let's blow this thing and go home.
Yeah, there's not much they can do right now, and it's going to be tied up in court for quite a while. They're going to lose the case, and when they lose the case, it's not going to matter anyway, because all this is being negotiated in the settlement with House versus NCAA, Hubbard, Carter, and also Fontenot. All four of those cases are being combined into a $2.7 billion settlement, which is probably going to happen over the next few weeks, and I'm going to be following the crap out of that. You can just count on that. So I'm really glad FSU stood up for themselves on this. They have taken a lot of grief. They got creaked out of the playoff big time after going undefeated, and then to get hit by the NCAA, same as we did. If I was them, I would not pay that penalty. Absolutely not. And I'd forget all this crap, because they can't do anything anyway. What are they going to do? Anyway, I did want to cover that because I was hoping and expecting them to do this, and now they've done it. Now we're going to get into something a little bit more fun and positive. Well, I don't know about that, because the meeting that he set up is with Kentucky. But we'll get into that because it sounds like there's probably a meeting with Tennessee as well. But anyway, CHAZ Lanier is this big-time transfer portal guy, and of course he's ranked, I believe, number 11 in the country as far as a transfer portal dude. And he shoots over 40% from three. He's very efficient, and Tennessee and Kentucky have been fighting over him. Now, he has set up a visit for Kentucky, but first he's going to be going to BYU this weekend, and then Monday he's heading to Kentucky. He's averaging about 20 points a game. He played at North Florida, and he's got 1 year left of eligibility. And here it says, CHAZ Lanier, the number 11 overall transfer, will take a visit to BYU this weekend and then head to Kentucky. And then he's also expected to take a visit to Tennessee, but dates are to be determined. All right, so let's talk about this. I'm not considering BYU to be a big-time competitor in this.
How dare you!
I think it's pretty much Kentucky or Tennessee. Now, the big selling point for Tennessee is obviously, and this is a great selling point, do you want to be the next Dalton Connect? We have a role for you here, and you've seen what happened to Dalton. We got him out of Colorado State or some small school in Colorado. He showed up here, and because he needed to learn how to play defense. And that's what the NBA scouts had told him. Well, where do you go if you need to improve your defense? Rick Barnes, he's Mr. Defensive Guru. All of his teams are always top 5 defense every year. That's what the guy does. But he has really learned to let his offensive-minded players play. And Dalton Connect showed the world last year, man, when you can shoot anywhere near like that, Rick Barnes is going to give you the green light all day long. And he wore it out. In that last game in the NCAA, he scored over 30 points. I mean, he did that a bunch. I don't know how many times he scored over 30 points. And he filled it up from three, and he dunked. I mean, he was a beast out there. And had we not run into Zach Edey, I think we might have won the whole thing. Kentucky's selling point is pretty simple. You've got a brand new coach, Mark Pope. He's very enthusiastic. He's got a ton of passion, and he's been doing a great job in the transfer portal. And he started out this year with 0 players. All the players left. They either went to the NBA or they hit the transfer portal or they decommitted. And a bunch of them went to Arkansas with John Calipari. Well, it didn't take him long to start filling up the boat. And he's filled it with 11 players so far. And 2 of them are recruits. And he also picked up a fella from BYU, Colin, the Chandler kid. I think he's spent 2 years on a mission. So there's 3, and then he got 8 out of the transfer portal. He just picked up Ainsley Almanor, who I think he's probably going to be more of a depth piece for them. And then they picked up a bunch of really solid 4-stars out of the portal that have a ton of experience. Some of them are guards, but what they really want is either CHAZ Lanier or Jackson Robinson. They would take both. They'd love to have both, but I don't think they're going to get both. And if they get one, they would prefer CHAZ Lanier, but if they can't get him, they'll take Jackson and be fine. Whereas Tennessee is pretty much focused on Lanier, period. I think he's the key guy that Rick Barnes is focused on. We've already picked up 3 really good players out of the portal, but Lanier would be the cherry on the top of the cake. And really, I think Tennessee's set at that point. I think they're very happy with their roster if they can pick up that one guy. Now, how much money is being offered? We know that Dalton Connect got reportedly, I can't confirm it, but I think it's pretty obvious, got $700,000 last year. And he was, I think, ranked the number 12th player. Now, NIL money's gone up. You saw where one guy got $2 million out at Washington. Now, those numbers can be self-reported, so they might not be that much in reality, because a lot of times they'll take like a lease of a car and count it as a full price of the car and things like that. But let's say he got, well into 7 figures. I would guess that Lanier's probably being offered $1 million.
$1 million.
That would sound about right to me. It may be a little more than that, maybe 1.2. I've heard reports of 1.5. It's hard to say, but I think Kentucky and Tennessee are probably going to offer about the same amount of money. I don't see them doing any $2 million deal. I think probably 1.2 would probably be the max if I had to guess with Tennessee. And Kentucky, this is an interesting situation because Pope being brand new and all these boosters wanting to support him, obviously they've got plenty of NIL money because every one of these guys they got out of the portal, they're getting paid good money. But here's the problem. If you paid them, say you paid them $500,000, a bunch of them, and then here comes this guy and you pay him a ton, that can create dissension big time. Because it's not like he's the number 1 recruit out of the portal, he's the number 11. And they're going to see it that way. So you got to be careful with your culture. Same at Tennessee. You can't overpay. Look, these are young men. They're in their early 20s. They're going to talk. They have to bond with their teammates. And one of the big ways you bond, you can't keep that kind of information from your teammates. They're going to want to know. And even if you don't tell them, eventually you will. You might be hanging out at somebody's apartment or whatever. Come on, man. How much you get? Everybody wants to know how much you got. And if you don't tell them, you look like an a-hole. Plus, you want to brag.
I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal.
Really?
So the money part, we'll see. I would estimate Kentucky, Tennessee probably offering about the same. It's really just the selling point of, do you want to be the next Dalton Connect, or do you want to fit into Kentucky's system, which is very three-point oriented? Either situation is going to be good for CHAZ Lanier. It's just picking out the one you like the most. If I had to guess, and I was an athlete, which I was a former Division I athlete, but not in basketball, and nobody offered me any money. I was a very average golfer over at Tennessee. But I would pick the place where I was going to be featured. If somebody said, you want to be the next Dalton Connect, I've got the spot open for you, that's probably what I'd pick. But he will not go wrong at Kentucky. I'll go ahead and tell you that's going to be a great spot. He's going to get to shoot plenty. So we'll find out probably next week. I'd say he'll commit at some point. If he goes Monday and commits to Kentucky, obviously it's over. If he comes out of Kentucky and then visits Tennessee, advantage Tennessee, because then that's his last visit, and Tennessee's going to be able to either match whatever he's been offered, because he's going to talk and say, look, this is what Kentucky offered me. Tennessee will probably have the opportunity to either match or just say, look, we can't pay you that, we'll pay you this, and you'll be the featured guy. What do you want to do? You want to worry about $100,000 or $200,000 when you could make, $100 million in the NBA? Because Dalton Connect's going to be a top 10 pick, and he's going to get NBA money, and that's big money.
Comes in pretty handy down here, bub.
Oh,
So anyway, I did want to talk about all this today. And if you like keeping up with this type of information, just hit this little button right here. It's the subscribe button. It will help you get the information. Doesn't cost you a dime. And right over here's most recent video YouTube thinks you'll enjoy. And we'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.